How's it going, guys? So in today's video, what I'm going to be going over is a request from a previous video comment, was a full process or a full tutorial on how I do my wood plaques or my wood engraving from start to finish. So that's what we're going to do here today. As it stands, we're a little over 850 subscribers, and I want to say thank you to everybody that continues to watch my content and continues to support me in what I'm doing here. Again, I hope to continue to bring you quality detailed tutorials and how-tos and tips and tricks and things like that to the laser engraving work that I do. And I hope that you can take this knowledge and tips and advance your own skill sets in your laser engraving work as well. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started.
Alright guys, this is a 6x8 floating wood plaque that I picked up from Walmart in the craft section. Now, all of my wood projects, I always start off with sanding them with a 220 grit sandpaper. I always look at the grains in the wood that I'm about to be doing, and I try to see what way the grain is running, and on this one is running from left to right. So the first thing I always do is take my 220 grit sanding block and I sand it with the grain. Now what this does is it helps even out the surface, and it makes the grains tighter, so that way the image that you're going to be engraving on this comes out a lot better. Now you can't tell in the video, but this piece is very smooth now. And what this will do is it'll make it to where now when I go to engrave on it, it is a very smooth, flush surface. Since the wood grains are very tight, there should be no uneven laser engravings on this plaque. And I love doing these pieces because they come out really nice and they look really good as wall art.
Alright guys, so let's go ahead and go over my settings. I've already selected my image. I'm keeping it as a grayscale image. My contrast is 50. My brightness is 50. White clip 255. Grayscale conversion is Luma. The algorithm is Atkinson. I stick with these default settings because when I create these images, I try to make them laser ready, and they seem to work very well with these default settings. So moving forward, we'll go into the process part. Here's my toolpath setting. When doing these grayscale images, I keep my preset at dot filled engraving. I keep the method at fill, my movement mode at dot, my fill interval for this size image, which I believe is a 6x8 that I'm going to be doing, I have it at 0.18 millimeter for the fill interval. My jog speed is 3000, dwell time 5 milliseconds per dot, and the laser power for this wood that I'm familiar with, 82%, seems to work very well for a solid surface burn without any engraving into the wood. Now, what you'll find is that my image, once it's finished laser engraving, it's not always extremely dark, but that's okay because when I finish it with a clear coat, the clear coat will darken it up a good bit, and it'll end up coming out to be a really nice image. So from there, save my settings, I generate my G-code, zoom in to see how the quality looks. It looks like it's going to be a great outcome, so I'm good with everything. It tells me that it's going to be 4 hours and 36 minutes, which seems to be good for this size of an image. Now we'll go ahead and move on to the lasering side.
Alright, so I've placed the wood plaque on the working platform. I've calibrated the tool head on the Z-axis where it is just above the plaque, and the laser is focused for this laser engraving of this image. Now I'll run the boundary, and what you'll notice is the laser is slightly on the outside edges of this plaque. The purpose for this is so that way when this laser begins etching, the image will be fully on the plaque from side to side, from top to bottom. The image will be on this plaque, covering it completely so that there are no unengraved areas, and it'll be a full image on the plaque. So after running my boundary, everything is perfect. The laser is slightly outside the edges of the plaque and is ready to begin engraving. So what I like to do is I'll use this clear oil-based gloss and I'll give it 2 coats, and that should really make this piece come together. Same way as always, cross pattern, going one way, then follow up with another way, even coats, 6 to 12 inches away. Here we go. And that's it. I'll give it 20, 30 minutes to dry, and I'll go on with the second coat. Now for the second coat, I had to apply it much thicker this time around because after doing that first coat, I was able to see that the wood absorbed this clear coat a good bit. There were some dry spots left over from whenever I finished spraying and it dried, and I want to avoid having any dry spots. And typically wood does soak up this this clear coat pretty good on the first round, and that's why it's also important to use a 220 grit sandpaper, because the smoother you can make the surface before laser engraving, the better your chances are that when you do apply these clear coats, that the wood doesn't have any dry spots when you apply it. And that's because when you sand it, you're actually tightening up the grains and leaving less porous areas. If I wouldn't have done the sanding, I probably would have had to do 4 or 5 coats of this clear just to get it to where everything is nice and even. But since I did do the 220 grit sanding prior to the laser engraving, it accepts this clear coat much better, and I can do less coats and get a good final result. Alright guys, here's the final product. Initially I did that first light coat followed by a second heavy coat. I did end up seeing some dry spots in it. Again, kind of how when I look at my canvases, I look for shimmer in the light. Same concept here, you get eye level and you look for shimmering in the light. So from here, I'll show you a comparison of the before clear coat and after clear coat, so that way you can see how much the image changed as far as darkness in that comparison. I hope you guys enjoyed, and here's the comparison.